than what faith and religion will.
No, that's a very, very interesting point. And I want to add to that also that the idea of class struggle, you're right, does not necessarily is only tied to communism. I mean, when the ideas of Darwin first surfaced, the bourgeoisie of European society immediately adopted this idea because it gave them an opportunity to suppress the idea of having a creator, and by doing that, they would essentially take any obstacles away for the lower classes to have any opportunity for any type of wealth or power, and they could use that to essentially dominate the political agendas that they were after. So, the social it became a social tool to use. It was not seen as a science. It was an ideology that was being promoted by the bourgeoisie at that time. So, if people really want to know, that comes from Anton Pannekoek's book, which is called Marxism and Darwinism, and it's a very interesting paradox. And so, this idea wasn't just grasped by the communists. This was, socialists and the beginnings of the capitalist systems that were also adopting these systems, because once you take away the creator and you are essentially teaching this as an ideology to people that we are coming from lower species, that we are just animals, you essentially take away the hope of people, and you can then control them by many different ways and many different tools. In our modern day and time, of course, it's the television, the media. So I always think back, if we actually did not have the television, how much clearer our minds would be from distortion, from these ideas that are put upon us, and our differences brought to the forefront. So that's very interesting.
I want to add a little bit to this because I want to give people a little bit of history.
Sure.
And the going scientifically, the study of all this is sociology, and where the term sociology come from was Auguste Comte, and that was 1798 to 1857 is from his birth to death, and he suggested that we apply a scientific method to the social world in a process that was known as positivism. Okay, and this was just after the French Revolution, and he knew that crowds had been cheering at public execution of the King and Queen of France, and Comte wondered what holds society together and why we have social order instead of anarchy. And this were the questions he asked. So, and he wondered, when society became set on a particular course, what causes society to change. So Comte decided that the scientific method held the key to answering them, just as the scientific method had held the law of gravity. So he thought that this would uncover the laws that underlie society, and Comte called his new science sociology. Now, the study of society is from the Greek logos of study of, and the Latin socius, companion, or being with others. So the purpose of the new science, according to Comte, would not only be to discover social principles, but also apply them to social reform. And this was all theory. So sociology was born of theory. And Comte developed a grandiose view that sociologists would reform society, making it a better place to live just by studying society, by studying people. He didn't do any research really like we do today, as far as actually observing or taking in scientific account or looking at other cultures. And a lot of his conclusions were abandoned because of this, but nevertheless, his insistence that we must observe and classify human activities to uncover society's fundamental laws was accepted, and that's up to where you're talking about now, because the term sociology was accepted, and then in about 1840, 1845, Herbert Spencer, which grew up in England, is often called the second founder of sociology, because Spencer disagreed with Comte, and he said that sociology would not guide social reform, and that societies were evolving and we shouldn't interfere, and societies go from lower form, which is barbaric, to higher form of civilized societies. So, and you go on through, and at the same time, we had Karl Marx, and just a little later in that time, Emil Durkheim, and even Max Weber. So, within about 30 years, you had Comte, Spencer, Marx, Durkheim, and Weber, all at the same time arguing all of these different facts. And at this time, science and sociology were becoming very much looked at in society, and they didn't have anything else to look at. And what it is, I think what's happened is that through these theories is what a lot of sociology and science is based on when it comes to not looking at religion, but looking at what a lot of theorists thought were just basically influenced by men and by the cultures of the world. So they were trying to explain, even Marxism and communism, and even Marx, as far as communism goes, Marx really didn't develop communism.
Right.
It was developed later, and you mentioned that earlier. But what's interesting is after Marx listened, and this is from Dobrynin, 1969, states that after listening to some of the positions attributed to Marx, he shook his head and said, "I am not a Marxist," because at that time they were associating Marxist and communism as the same thing. So there's been a lot of disagreement, even up through history, on the different theories that go along with all of this. And it is still very much alive today, and we find a lot of the same arguments